The family is back. And no, not the Vin Diesel one. Mafia is finally back after the catastrophic Mafia 3 that never happened and was just a figment of our imagination.
Ty, když jsi fanoušek, tak jako co bys si přál, jako kdybys měl být Mafie prostě...
Já bych chtěl prostě...
Kdyby měla být Mafie 3, kterou ještě nikdo neudělal.
Mafia: The Old Country is the game set in early 1900s, and it's telling the story that it fully plays out in Sicily. And it's completely in linear fashion, more or less like Mafia always has been, because you know Mafia 3 never happened. We play as Enzo, who was sold by his father to work in the mines to pay his debts. And he actually kinda looks like Italian Cal Kestis. Enzo basically grew up in mines, and one day when the mine collapses and there's this big shit show happening, he decides to take his chances and escape, and he finds his new home, his La Familia, at Don Torrisi, who takes him in and makes him one of his men. And the story plays out in really linear fashion when we see how Enzo is basically starting to befriend the people who work at Don Torrisi's, and he is starting to climb the ranks at the family. And the characters are really well written. Like, for an example, I really liked Luca and Cesare, but at the same time I hated Tino, and this is what is supposed to happen. You are supposed to be friendly with Cesare and Luca, and you are supposed to hate Tino. And I think that writers actually did a great job writing those characters, because like more and more I was playing, I started caring more and more about certain characters, and I couldn't wait if I will be given the right to kill some of the other characters that I genuinely think deserved it. And as you progress within the game, your relationship with these characters deepens. You care about them more, and your protagonist also does start caring about them more. And if I have to be honest, the writing is in fact the biggest highlight of this entire game. And there's also a forbidden love story, and not one but two races, so like they definitely want to hit some beats that original Mafia game had to appeal to the fans of the franchise. And it definitely feels like a Mafia game. The atmosphere of the missions, the underdog story, every single story beat that follows how the story goes, the game, it is made with intent of being a Mafia story, and what made Mafia games great. The game, however, is really cinematic this time, so if anyone says that Mafia Definitive Edition and Mafia 2 were also kinda cinematic in a way, well, this plays more cinematic than The Last of Us or Uncharted. Plenty of cutscenes, long ones too, a lot of sequences when you slowly walk behind the NPC as they are explaining stuff to you. At times there would be no reason to even move so slowly because nobody is even explaining anything, and there would be no dialogue. During these sequences, sometimes personally I feel really bored, and I started playing around with crouching and discovered at the same time that in most of these walking sequences, you can actually crouch and you will move faster than standing up, so it causes the NPC in front of you to walk faster as a result of it, and they look like they are genuinely on the speed up. I really did love the story of this game. It is not stellar, there are like few buts that I have, and the particular one is in the mission when you are serving as one of the guards for Don Torrisi's meeting in a warehouse on a neutral territory, and your smart ass protagonist decided that he is going to take no weapons at all and has to be given a shittiest revolver in the game in the middle of the action by someone who got shot because the creators wanted you to be on low resources, so to raise the stakes of the action. My second complaint, however, I cannot even mention it because it ties to the very end of the game, because it made everything feel really predictable and presented main protagonist as a complete idiot. Overall, I feel like the story is great. The most people will definitely enjoy it, especially if they like stories of Mafia games. However, the gameplay side of it, it's clunky, janky, unpolished, and the performance leaves a lot to wish for. And I was playing on a PlayStation 5. When I saw these ridiculous system requirements, I was like, hell no, this is an Unreal Engine game, and I I decided to play on PlayStation 5. So for an example, let's start with this. Riding a horses feels great on an open terrain, but there is a horse race that it takes you on a ride through the town of San Celeste. So it feels really stiff and scripted, handholdy, and constantly makes you grind the walls because it is made in this fashion. The performance on PlayStation 5 during this race in San Celeste goes to shit. I was playing on a performance mode that the frames dipped so hard I had problems looking at my TV. Not only the graphics aren't special in this game, but it sometimes runs like complete garbage. The same problem happens with the car race, although it works a little bit better because it doesn't feel as stiff as the horse race, but you also have to ride through the town, which causes pretty big frame drops, and the difficulty of both races feel like there is none at all. Like there's plenty of scripts happening during these races, and at certain points it feels like they allow you to pass the rival and move to the next one that is in front of you. Almost every cutscene in the game also is 30 frames per second, and not all of them, because some cutscenes are like okay, but then like 90% of those cutscenes, especially when they kinda go into this panoramic view, those go to 30 frames. There's always this stutter when you are transitioning from the game to a cutscene, but on a positive note, the AI of the enemies really praiseworthy. They will hide, they will rush your position. Sometimes you will have to utilize knife in the middle of the gunfight because they get too close to you and you have to get rid of them, and it is great. However, to this praise I also have complained, because the field of view for those enemies when you are in a stealth mode leaves a lot to wish for, because I could sneak to the enemy from the side and maybe being a little bit even in front of them, and they would not see me. I could just easily take them out. And this is something that is in fact noticeable because there is plenty of sneaking sequences. I was actually kind of shocked. I think there may be even more sneaking sequences than there is actually shooting sequences in the entire game. So at certain points you start noticing that the field of view of the enemies is not very good. However, this is like a thing that happens in all of the modern games I've noticed, so they are definitely not alone with this problem. However, when throwing grenades, for an example, sometimes the explosion would happen behind the enemy and nothing would happen to them. Another time they would, for an example, fly into the space like a rocket, like you see, for an example, in this clip. At one point, I also did kill the enemy when he was just exiting the car, so he died and froze mid-animation. And when I kept shooting him, the game would show me constantly the indicator that the enemy has been hit, making me feel like he's still alive. So I was just shooting him like an idiot and he just died mid-animation and just kept standing. But except for the frames issues, these bugs are not something that ruins the game though. And the frames issues are really bad, and they pull you out of the game. And when you are playing the game that at some times it runs 60 frames per second and you get to the cutscene that completely shits the bed in terms of the frame rate, that is not good. That pulls you out of the experience and definitely doesn't serve more as a cinematic thing. And as all of those problems that I mentioned right now, when talking about the frame rate issues in between, are minuscule, this one, however, is a big one. Aim assist, where you have it turned on natively. So the game, when you are playing on the controller, usually most games have aim assist turned on. However, the stock settings that the game comes with are unplayable. My crosshair would actually fly around like a drunken pilot on 9/11. I would aim to shoot the enemy upstairs, but the enemy on the ground floor would run out from behind the cover, and my crosshair would forcefully pull itself down and glue itself to the enemy that is on the bottom floor, resulting in me wasting ammo, which is scarce in this game, or even getting killed. And I had to go into options and completely turn off the aim assist. And listen, I'm not the best at aiming with the controller, but finally I started killing the enemies instead of getting killed. I finally started getting headshots. I even got the headshot achievement, which felt like impossible thing to achieve with aim assist on. It is just so bizarre that aim assist would be overtuned to such an extent to actually cause more harm than help. And yes, you can play with sliders and you can adjust it to your liking, but the stock settings, which were all in the middle, caused me so much pain that I was like, fuck it, I'm not playing with it. I just turned it completely off and I've been happier ever since. And still, at times my crosshair would glue itself to an enemy when I was going into the aiming mode, and my crosshair would dart into the direction that opposite from the one that I was actually trying to aim at. So for the split second it would glue itself to the enemy, but it was not really much of an issue. So I was like, okay, it's not as aggressive, so, and it happens like sporadically, so I was able to play it and it wasn't really much of a problem anymore. And one more thing that deserves praise and criticism at the same time: the boss fights. Every boss is a standoff, the fight on knives. It is a pretty well done thing and it's pretty well interesting idea. However, they tried to keep it cinematic to the point at sometimes it felt more like a movie rather than the video game, and it overall hurt the idea in the process. And if you are about to die, the game allows you to like twice or even more times to regain some health by going into the quick time event when you have to start mashing the square button. Maybe it is more unforgiving on hard difficulty, but I had hard times with shooting sections in this game on normal mode, and the NPCs are not brain dead, so raising the difficulty just to make boss fights harder for me would also raise the difficulty of all the other elements that I felt are pretty well optimized in terms of the difficulty, so I just decided to not bother with it. And at few moments in the game I happened to see pop-ups and actual flickering textures, which should not happen at all, but this is an Unreal Engine 5, and let's be honest, Unreal Engine is not really a stable engine. The most devs don't really know how to make games using Unreal Engine to work properly, and this has to be like the first time I actually seen flickering and popping textures on console, because there were some problems with, for an example, Jedi Survivor on PlayStation 5 with textures, but not to this extent. This has to be like the first game that even on consoles there is problem with that, and there are numerous people claiming the same for PC edition, having really powerful GPUs like 5080s or stuff, and they are saying that they cannot deal with the pop-ups and the flickers, that even reinstalling the game, changing the settings, it's always the same thing. The textures just flicker constantly for them. It's not as egregious on the console, but it still happens on the console, and it should not. This game is genuinely unfinished and it should have had more time to cook. And from the other things, the game is not allowing you to stop the car or the horse at your destination by yourself. It always takes your controls away and parks the car or the horse by itself. So that's why this game is even more cinematic and even more made like a movie than even The Last of Us or Uncharted, that a lot of people have problems with how they are made. This game just takes the controls away. They don't even allow you to park the car by yourself. Sometimes I even felt like this game maybe have been considered to be even open world, but they decided to cut costs and made it into the linear game that just allows you to enter free exploration mode after you finish the game. And there are moments when you visit, for an example, someone who can sell you things, or you can sell things to them, and there are collectibles in the world that, for an example, I could not enter the church to get it because it was closed for the majority of the game, and I could hear the collectible in the church but I couldn't get it, and it feels like it was intended to be open world, but they just changed the idea mid-process, and they just included this free exploration mode at the end. Because you see, to get to, for an example, someone who sells you things, you would have to ignore the game's request that there is something urgent happening in the story of the game and go on a detour. And that kind of pulls you out of the game and out of the experience, so you should not really do that. And you end up not visiting those places ever in the game, and you may maybe enter those places in a free exploration mode when it's no longer necessary because you finished the game. However, I can say the story is really well written. It is engaging. The performances by the cast are very strong, and more I played the game, the more I wondered maybe this would have been a better movie than the video game. The whole thing is 9 hours long, and most of it's cinematic walking or cutscenes or riding from point A to point B just to play a sneaking sequence that is going to be shorter than the ride to the damned place. So I don't know, maybe they should have considered making it into a movie or a short miniseries on Netflix than into the video game. The driving is not pleasant at all. There is nothing happening on the road, nothing to collect, nothing to interact with, and some drives take a really long time. The creators knew the driving sequences suck dick because they implemented skip the drive option at every occasion they get. So when you are driving in a car with NPCs or on the horses, you get some conversations going on, some new lore, and even then the game asks you if you want to skip the drive, and you can do it at any point you can. So I just abstained from using this option, but twice the game genuinely broke me because driving with cars especially sucks dick so much, and it's so sluggish with most of them that when NPCs finished talking and there was nothing going on anymore, I just pressed skip drive because I couldn't be bothered to go for like 10 minutes from point A to point B just to watch the cutscene and finish the playing section that is going to maybe be like 5 or 10 minutes itself. I wasn't expecting this game to be like 60 frames in performance mode on consoles. When I have seen those ridiculous requirements for PC, I was honestly like, okay, this game is not going to run well even on the consoles. But I wasn't expecting such a performance mess, especially in the performance mode. Personally, I would recommend this game on sale. Even as someone who loves the franchise and wants to see it back, and I want to get more Mafia, all the Mafia. But in terms of the story and the atmosphere and everything and the acting, this is great. However, it feels unfinished, even for $50.